welcome. My name is Kendra. I'm the manager of development for the Children's Media Association, which is a global nonprofit organization that works to connect, inspire, and inform professionals working in all verticals of children's media. Today is our second installment of our ongoing series, Dr. Amanda Gummer Presents, where we are joined by the incredible Dr. Amanda to discuss different ways children's media can contribute to healthy child development. So Dr. Amanda is the CEO of the research consultancy Fundamentally Children, as well as Dr. Gummer's Good Play Guide, which is a consumer-facing review site for children's toys, apps, learning, and baby products. She is widely considered as the UK's go-to expert on play, toys, parenting, and child development, and was commissioned by the Toy Association to create the STEAM Toy Accreditation Framework, which is the topic we're going to be discussing today, all about STEAM for success. So we do want this series to be as interactive and meaningful as possible. So please feel free to leave your comments, your thoughts, your responses in all the chats throughout the discussion. And yeah, with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Amanda.
Thanks, Kendra. It's lovely to be here again. And welcome to those of you who are here for the second time. I'm hoping that you'll notice some familiarities around the way we do this. And I reiterate what Kendra was saying about the more you put in, the more you'll get out. So please do interact with us as much as we can. We want this to be as useful for you as it can be. And we can only do that if we know what you're thinking. So put those comments in the chat and join in with the Q&A at the end, by all means. As Kendra said, I'm a research psychologist. I've been doing research in this space for about 20 odd years. And today, we are talking about STEAM and STEAM as it applies to the children's media industries. So I'm going to do what I did last time and get you to look at the definition, because my university lecturer drilled it into me that you've got to define your terms. And we had a lot of fun trying to define STEAM, especially comparing it to STEM. So we're gonna do a bit of that. Then I'm going to show you what we've done for the Toy Association with their toy assessment framework, and how you can use it for wider application. So not just for toys or even books, but actually digital content and games. So there are things in it that you can use it for. And we're going to have a few examples of what's working well. So I'm hoping that's going to be great. So before I go any further, in the chat, please have a go at defining what you mean when you talk about STEAM. Whilst you're doing that, I'm going to tell you a little bit about the back and forth that we had when we were looking at what a STEAM framework looks like. Now, in the UK, certainly a few years ago, we referred to it as STEM. And there was a STEM, STEAM, and then it became STREAM because they put religious education in there. And then it became STREAMED because it had educational, and then I think there was a D for dance or drama or something. Anyway, the acronym was getting longer and longer and longer and longer. And so we were like, okay, well, what exactly is STEAM, and how does it differ from something that's just an educational toy or a maths toy, or, and what's the difference between the STEAM and STEM?
I'll have a go at it. I have always associated it with, the very science and math, education and critical thinking and stuff. I never quite related to it because I've always been, the artsy fartsy type. And so I was always like, oh, those are for the smart science kids, that track of education. And so, but then, STEAM, adding in the arts. So I'm curious to learn, the difference and how it does incorporate the arts. But that's what I've just associated it with, the acronym it stands for, all those sciencey and mathematical topics.
Yep, perfect. So it is science and maths based. So science, technology, engineering, and maths with arts and maths. And the arts is the one that we struggle with. There has been, like I said, there's been conversations around whether the A is arts or and. So is it STEM or is it STEAM? And does the A represent arts? And if it does, what kind of arts? Is that just fine arts? Is it performing arts? Is it social sciences? What does it involve? So the definition that we've gone with is it's interdisciplinary, which also I think is important for what we did with the framework, because it's not just a maths toy, it's an interdisciplinary toy that it covers more than one of the following subjects. So science, technology, engineering and maths. That couples academic concepts with real world lessons and experience, and that's where we've put the art side of things. So creativity, art express itself, self-expression and creative endeavors all come under the A bit, but without it being an arts subject in itself, because otherwise I think we are getting it lost and it becomes too wide, and you might as well just use the word educational. And even educational has its, definitions, because is that school-based subjects or is it anything that helps children develop skills? So things like communication skills, it's not something that kids are going to learn as a lesson in the same way they learn math or English, or science, but there are skills that kids learn. So if you're making an educational toy, does that include the softer skills and empathy and negotiation and things like that are all really important skills for kids to learn, but does that come under the educational bracket? So with all of these things, there is an issue around definition. So I think it was great to be able to work with the Toy Association to come up with a much clearer definition of what a STEAM product is and what STEAM means when we're talking about kids' development. So that's the definition that we've used, and we went backwards and forwards with various experts in the industry, various academics, to really sort of thrash out where the A fits in and how to make it work, whilst keeping the STEM aspects of it sort of front and center. So that's where we got to. So the framework is split into 3 phases. And I think one of the reasons we were asked to do this is obviously through the Good Play Guide, we already have an assessment of what constitutes a good toy. So we used our existing framework and we added in inclusivity, because we felt that that was something we were looking to do more of anyway. But we felt that STEAM can feel quite, geeky or academic. And we wanted to make sure that there was real representation within the STEAM industry. So it's not just geeky boys who like maths and science. We want to make sure that it's accessible to girls. We want to make sure it's accessible to children who maybe aren't as academic as you might think. So the first thing, and this is my approach to anything to do with kids, is it's got to be fun. So we look at the fun and engaging rating. Then we look at the ease of use, because if they can't access it and they don't know how to use it, then again, it doesn't matter how much learning and educational value something has, it's not going to get used. Then we look at the skills developed and looking at how it develops those really important skills. And for these products, it's around the STEAM learnings. And then we looked at the inclusion. So that's the first phase. Then we look at what we've called prime STEAM attributes. So this is that real world relevance. It's the problem solving. It's kinesthetic learning. So it's that hands-on doing. So it's very different from sitting a kid in front of a TV show that they just watch passively. So that content, it might be very science-based and it may have lots of really good STEAM themes going through it. But if it's passive and it's not promoting hands-on learning, that was where we felt that it would fall down. So it's very much about hands-on kinesthetic learning. It's creative. It's got that innovative self-expression, productive. You're creating something out of it. That logical problem solving, again, that's an element of that, how kids learn through play, through trial and error, through testing hypotheses. I wonder what happens if, I put the plug in the sink and turn the faucets on, what happens? Well, the bathroom floods and mum gets cross. But, it's that helping kids understand how to think logically and scientifically and critically as well. And it's that curiosity as well. So helping kids be interested in the world, which is why that real world relevance is also really important. Because, I hear it a lot. I used to hear it from my kids when they were at school about, why do we have to learn Pythagoras' theorem? Why do we have to learn quadratic equations? When am I ever going to use those in real life? And the point of good STEAM content and toys for kids is that they've got that kind of, they can understand it so that it promotes their curiosity and drives them to ask more questions about how the world works. So that's where we want to get to with that. And it's also progressive. So there is that developmental benefit. So it meets kids where they're at. They're able to enter the content or the product and play with it in a way that meets their needs now. But there is some scaffolding so that kids are able to develop those skills as they play more with it. So there's an element of progression in there. So they're what we call the prime STEAM attributes. And then we've got the STEM categories. So the science, technology, engineering and maths. And that is age appropriate. And that is really important, that age appropriate content around the toys. I think we can probably move on a couple of slides now. So yeah, so that's the characteristics of a good toy are fun to play with and easy to use, support skill development and is accessible. Then we have the prime STEAM attributes, and then we have the specific STEM categories. And again, they can be further divided down. Science covers an awful lot of stuff, but we bring it down for sort of age appropriateness. And I think the important thing when we're considering the STEAM content is that it's suitable for your audience. So a child of, I don't know, 3, 4, who is starting to get into science and scientific thinking, at that age, they're really just doing trial and error learning. They're not doing an awful lot more. They're not doing hypothesis testing. But there are some really great resources out there. And I think the other thing that when you're looking at age appropriate content, it's about making it that inclusive bit as well. So making it as we call it wide walls and high ceilings. So we can get as many people engaging with it as possible, and they can start wherever they feel comfortable and move through it. And so things like the Baby Encyclopedia or A Scientist Like Me or whatever, those books where kids can really relate to things and you've got the sort of role models, that's great. And just conversation starters. Again, it's about really, when you're little, it's about promoting curiosity. It's really about the very basics. If you're not talking about even number recognition necessarily at this age, that's about as much as you're starting to. So the things like number blocks are great because they just introduce the numbers in a way that is very very natural. It's not overly pushy, it's not overly academic. And the picture in the middle is the Lego STEAM education pack. So I think, that again is that hands-on learning, learning by doing. That's all really great for this preschool age. And I think if you're looking at sort of science and engineering, something like Number Blocks is one of my favorite preschool brands in that sort of STEAM sense, because it's obviously very mathsy. But you've also got things like pattern recognition, which is early science skill. You've got the testing, the trial and error learning, and you've got some engineering because you can use the blocks to create different structures. So things like balance and gravity and all of that kind of stuff can all come into it. So it could easily be categorized as a maths brand, but actually it's got enough of the other components to allow it to feel steamy, if you like. So when we move up an age group to the 5 to 10 years, kids' imagination and their reading skills have gone up now, so they can learn to teach themselves a lot more. So there's a lot more opportunity for books to come in here, but both factual books that kids can boost their confidence because they can go and wow their parents with the fact that maybe the parents didn't know, and that's always great for kids to be able to feel like they've got one up on somebody. It's a nice thing, especially when it's the parents. But also the fictional, the story, the narratives around STEAM topics, that's great, and that kind of aspirational feeling about where I could be, and letting their imagination run wild and getting into maybe the sci-fi genre as well. So that can all be powerful stuff there. At this age, kids all want to be older than they are and bigger than they are. So toys that help them feel sort of aspirational and more grown up. So realistic looking toys like the microscope here, they can be really engaging, and kids can feel quite important if they're doing proper scientific experiments like they've seen, I know, scientists do. And then there's some other brands, you know, the Cyberboy, the Inside Out was a great brand, and there's sort of the biology side of things, and again that's often seen as a softer of one of the sciences, but I think it's really important that we've got all of the sciences represented here, and the way that Inside Out deals with biology as well as the emotions and the sort of the adventure side of things, I think that was really powerful. And I think Cyberchase, sorry, as well, is really it's cool, it's fun, it's not geeky, it gives you that sort of access to some techie stuff in a fun, accessible way for kids. So I think that's, you know, that's really good too. As they go up another age group, and now we're sort of 11 plus, we're into secondary school, they are a lot more, they can handle a lot more complicated theories, much more hypothetical. So things like testing hypotheses, and if, you know, what happens if this, and if we assume that this is going to happen, how do we validate that, or how do we set up an experiment? Products such as Gravitrax are great for this age, and it's that control, so kids can manage their experiments and they can test one theory against another. And then again, that kind of representation, I really like the fact that Big Bang Theory's got some really geeky girls in there. I slightly bulk against the blonde bimbo character, but there are enough sort of intelligent women in there that I think it does tick the representation box, and it does bring it into everyday life. So I think Big Bang Theory is a really good way for kids to, or is a good example of kids, of older kids being able to enjoy STEM and STEAM content in a everyday kind of sitcom way. So I think that works really well. And then for those of you, I don't know if he's come over to the US yet, but Brian Cox and his Human Universe and all his sort of stargazing and astronomy and all of that kind of stuff, he's phenomenal. And he, again, presents it in a really accessible way that can, you know, families can watch together. And I think that's really good too. So when you've got stuff for older kids, being able to do it in a way that prompts discussions with their parents, so that you've got opportunities for families to come together around this, and it's not stigmatized, it's not seen as overly geeky, it's something that families can investigate and explore really well, you know, together. I think that's really powerful. And STEAM Toy Assessment Framework is freely available on the Toy Association's website, so you can go and have a look at it. It's all there, and it's got a lot more information about what constitutes relevant age appropriate STEAM content, or this is all based on toys, but it's very easy, I think, for you to take it and go, okay, well, what does that mean if I'm a publisher, or what does that mean if I'm a game developer or a TV show producer? It's very extractable, if you like. So do go and have a look at that, and it is freely available and you can download it. And the toys that have been accredited are all, well, they're all on Amazon under the STEAM Toy, accredited STEAM Toy thing here, so they're listed there. But they've all been really well tested. They're tested rigorously with kids and professionals, and just being able to have that sort of awareness of what makes a good STEAM toy, I think, is really leveling things up, and I think it's making it easier for retailers. I think it's making it easier for parents, and actually what it's doing in the industry is leveling up the standard of the products that are being produced. So it's great to see that, and I think if we can get that to go wider outside of just the toys, but we can get it into all aspects of kids media, I think it could be game changing, because STEAM is the skill set, or contains the skill sets that we need for kids to be able to succeed in the modern world. Because, you know, we're all seeing the pace of change with AI and everything that's going on around that, and, you know, the kids are going to need to start learning about the sort of the science, the technology, and especially the maths angles from an early age, so that they're able to keep up. So anything that we can do to help that feel fun, help that feel engaging, help it be more accessible, I think we've got a real role to play there. So I'm really excited about the possibilities of STEAM themed content, and the kind of the whole industry sector, if you like. I think it's got huge potential.
And sort of what you were mentioning is, I do not have the percentage in front of me, but I saw somewhere that, there's going to be jobs in the next 20 years that do not even exist now. Like, it really is mind-boggling that the kids who are, playing with these toys now, there's going to be a workforce for them that doesn't even exist for us. So I think, it's really cool to teach the problem solving and the critical thinking now. So whatever it looks like in our future, they're going to be able to, to work with that. So and then I do want to, there's a few comments that I want to just bring up while we're on this topic. Sean does mention that he would love to see more offerings towards careers in animation and storytelling as part of STEAM, because there's problem solving, there's math, there's creative expression, all of this, because you work with so many different softwares, but you also have the creative aspect of storytelling. So I think that's a really great point. And I don't know if there's anything out there right now in terms of toys, but maybe, curriculum or something that can start at least teaching the concepts of animation storytelling. I don't know if, Mandy, you know of any out there yet, but
yeah, there's a few actually. There's one called Hue Animation, which is like a stop motion animation studio that's really kid friendly, really easy to use, and kids can. When we reviewed this for them for the Good Play Guide, we were really impressed, because you can have a bunch of kids, and you can have the arty one, and you can have the techie one, and you can have kids who are able to play to their strengths, because you've got all aspects of it. So you've got the younger kids colouring in the scenery or making the models for the story, and then you've got the sort of slightly older one writing the narrative, and then you've got another one sort of setting up the camera and the lighting and all that kind of stuff. And it's a really great collaborative sort of summer project, if you like. But those kind of things, they're great. You don't actually need a whole sort of kit to do it. I think if the kids have got access to their parents' smartphones, you can set things up with lots of different ways. And, an old cardboard box can act as your sort of set, and you can put different things in there and tell stories. So you can be really creative. And I think you only have to see what kids are doing on TikTok these days to see how innovative they can be. But I think that's a really good point. And I think STEAM skills do set you up for a wide range of careers. And like you say, it's something as it might feel like animation feels quite arty, but there's a lot of science and technology in there. So yeah, absolutely.
Betsy did comment how, she was answering our question earlier, how she associates STEAM more with data-driven work, but arts is more interpretive. So interesting to see, how the two might be less binary and how they work with each other. And so we've kind of been discussing that, but just how the arts aspect can be that real creative problem solving and interpretation, I guess, to those hard science skills.
Yeah, and I think that's what makes STEAM so powerful, because you have the evidence base from the data, but that allows you to then be really creative. Because if you don't understand your subject matter, you're just chucking ideas into the ether, right? So by having that, and this is, I'm a researcher by profession, so I'm going to be saying this, but by understanding, doing the maths, doing the science, doing the experiments, testing things out, running those A/B testing on the tech, that you're developing, all of that stuff helps you then go, okay, well, that worked, let's try this. And it's the let's try this is where the creativity and imagination comes into it. And it's, I think, rather than STEAM limiting imagination, I think it empowers it. So I think it's, I think that's it's fascinating. And I think if you're looking at, people sending rockets into space and trying to take people to Mars and all of that kind of stuff, there's a lot of arts and inspiration and creativity that goes into that. there's and a lot of the science is a bit more sort of wing and a prayer, but they do it, they try it, they test it, and they move forward. And the modeling and all that kind of stuff that goes behind it, I think is incredible. So no, it's really, really interesting to see how the arts does really impact. And it is that prime STEAM attributes, but it's the kind of the real world relevance. It's the imagination and creativity and problem solving and logical processes that bring the STEM subjects to life. I think it's a lot more dynamic. It's a lot more alive than just science, technology, engineering, and maths. I think that's one of the things I think that I'm really pleased about, is it's brought it to life, it's enriched it, it's become something that's a bit more exciting and more accessible for kids as well. Because like I say, it used to have a geeky boy sort of label to it, and I feel like everybody should be encouraged to find their passion within STEAM and find the things, whether it is an animation studio or a nuclear physicist or a somebody who's building a new tunnel under the Atlantic, or whatever it is. There's opportunities for children to find their thing within the STEAM ecosystem, if you like. So I think that's really important too.
Yeah.
And it is something that is growing in consumer awareness as well. We are getting I think there's a few things that have happened. I think part of it is post-pandemic. I think the homeschooling surge has massively helped with parents going, hey, well, what do I need to teach my kids? What do they need to know? And how do I do that? And STEAM is absolutely up there on parents' priorities. So having something that's a bit more uniformed and with a badge and everything for toys certainly has helped. But that kind of parents wanting to give their kids a better start in life, either through the homeschooling or through the extracurricular stuff. So they've been at school and then they're coming back, and what is it that parents can do during the summer holidays, during weekends, after school, that gives their kids that edge and gives them the skills that they're going to need to be employable, to be successful, and as well as to pass their school exams. So I think that's something that's been really emphasized and increased massively in the last sort of 3 or 4 years. And I think if you can explore this for your area of children's media, so whether it's publishing or digital or games or toys, whatever, and look at what that means for you and how to serve those parents and the children with the content in a way that is age appropriate and engaging and fun and meets those criteria for sort of inclusion, accessibility, and all of that stuff, whilst delivering some really important skill-based learning through the science, technology, engineering and math content, but in a way that really kind of is really dynamic and brings it to life. So I think if you can, and it's different it'll be different for the different types of media that we're talking about that you're in, but I think just having a think about what that would look like for you and where you're at, I think is really worth a sort of a half hour of navel gazing and just having a think about it from your own personal perspective. So the other thing that I think is also interesting in terms of the trends and the consumer awareness is the increasing awareness that we have of special educational needs, and particularly autism, because a lot of the STEM subjects are appealing for kids with autism. So that kind of repetitive, logical, problem-solving, fact-based information seems to be accessible by children with autism. Not all forms of autism, but there is and we, Lego set up autism clubs with the Lego, because the kind of the engineering side of Lego and the pattern recognition and the sort of the construction of it all really does appeal to kids with autism. And children with autism struggle to learn in social settings. So the school-based, classroom-based learning isn't best for them. It's not how their brain works. They don't learn really well from each other. So there is a huge opportunity then for them to learn from the content that you guys can provide, whether it's apps or games or TV programs or books. But you can help children with those special needs really engage with a subject matter that resonates with them, but that currently they don't have as much access to, because the style of the teaching doesn't suit their style of learning. So I think there's a huge opportunity here for us to look at special needs and look at how STEAM can be a force for good when we're dealing with increasing inclusion and accessibility to really important content. So I think that's the other thing that is worth really sort of having a bit of a deep dive into.
So Melanie is wondering, is there a formula to creating a fun STEAM activity? Which I know you sort of have your framework already set up, but if you have any more tips or tricks for someone who's looking to do that.
So yeah, first of all, I would very clearly identify who it is that's going to be doing the activity, and I would limit it to a sort of a 2-year age gap, because I do get people. We had one for the STEAM accreditation actually, that they said their product was from kids from like 5 to 105 or something. It's like, no, it's not. It really isn't. So we need to define who it is you're aiming it for, and then just really meet them where they're at, figure out where they're, who they are, what they're doing, what do they relate to, and then build in those kind of progressive learning. But the Toy Association STEAM framework is a really good place for starting, even if you're not creating toys, using that as that kind of, is it fun? Is it engaging? Is it easy to follow? Can they get into it really easily? Can they start to have fun quite quickly? And the younger the kids are, the quicker you need to engage them, because they don't have that perseverance, stickability yet. And then, is it something that's going to help them develop some skills? And what are those skills that it's going to develop? And am I falling foul of stereotypes or anything like that? So what am I doing to make it as accessible and as entertaining as I can? And then I'd look at the prime STEAM attributes and check, use it as a checklist. Is it hands-on learning? Is it real world relevance? Is it creative? And use that as a sort of a steering guide. And then have a real think about what the subject matter is that you're trying to teach them, and break it down a little bit and teach it in different ways. And I think that's, it's called multimodal learning. So the more ways that we put things into kids' brains, the more hooks they've got to get it out of it. So if they're touching it and seeing it and hearing it and talking about it and manipulating it, that's lots of different hooks going in, and they've got lots more chance of then that memory sticking and that learning actually being something that is consolidated. So absolutely. But no, thanks, Melanie. Great question.
And there's the toy accreditation framework. Is that accessible anywhere?
Yeah, if you go onto the toyassociation.org, I think it is, and you look in the resources, and there's a whole section on STEAM, and there's the toy framework there. You can download it. It's absolutely free. It's widely accessible. And it's got, I think it's 26 pages long. So it's a meaty document with lots of kind of guidance on how to do it. But I think it can really help not just toy manufacturers or game manufacturers, but I think the wider media industry as well. So yeah, absolutely. But we do see people making mistakes in this, and we've talked already about sort of the gender stereotyping, and there's some mistakes I feel have been made in trying to combat the gender stereotyping as well. So for me, STEAM is gender neutral, and I get that boys want to make boys might want to make something different from what girls might want to make, and the sort of lotions and potions side of things might be fun for girls if they're making perfumes and stuff. But I think if we can make it as accessible, what we don't want to do is have the hard core science and maths and stuff being all boys, and the softer, pretty easy stuff being girly. I think we need to make sure that the complexity of the products and the skills that are being developed are on a par, regardless of whether you're making perfumes and soaps or whether you're making compounds for building a fortress or whatever it is. So I think making sure that we're not dumbing down stuff for girls even if you're making it more, making the scientific concepts more appealing by widening them from just the sort of the traditional boy stuff, making sure we're not softening it too much and dumbing it down when we're making STEM or STEAM content or products for girls. I think and again, this is something that we see all the time, is it can just be a bit confusing, and kids can be a bit sort of lost as to where to even start, because the instructions are maybe too wordy, or there's a mismatch between the way the instructions are written and the way that the toy is played with or the content's engaged with. So I think sort of making sure that it's not that you are really meeting them where they're at, you're going in at age appropriate level, and you're not, and all of the aspects of it are age appropriate, and you're not sort of confusing things with expecting kids to have skills that they don't have yet. And again, we talked about it at the beginning, but if it's boring and the kids are just a bit switched off, doesn't matter how good the STEAM content is, doesn't matter how much learning there is in there, if they're bored, they're not going to learn. And you're going to damage your brand and your sort of longevity of your brand as well. So it's got to be fun, it's got to be engaging, and it's got to be something that the kids think is cool and not just overly geeky. And I think there's a real balance there to be had with education and entertainment. And I think it's a really tricky line to walk. And I think some of the examples we were looking at earlier do it well, but it's not easy. And I think depending on who you're aiming it at, if you're aiming it at the education market, then obviously you go heavier on the education. If you're aiming it at a home market, then the fun and the entertainment has to come first, because you've got to get the kids to want to pester their parents to get it and to watch it and to get engaged with it. So it's like hiding the vegetables in the spaghetti bolognese, because it's kind of, you put the good stuff in there and the kids don't necessarily know they're learning, because you don't want it to feel too schooly. You want it to feel fun and engaging. So, and then my bugbear when it comes to pitfalls is the label slapping, and calling something STEAM because you want to sell more stuff, or you want to appeal to an education market, or you want to get parents to think it's a really good product or a good concept. Doesn't work. If it's not STEAM, it's not STEAM. And there are loads of other things out there that aren't STEAM that are really good. There's loads of stuff being done in the wellbeing space, and we talked about that last time. There's loads of stuff being done around friendships and social skills, or imaginative play, and there's loads of other things out there and other labels. STEAM isn't something that should be shoehorned. It shouldn't be label slapped, and you shouldn't shoehorn product or content artificially just to be able to get a STEAM label on it. So I think recognizing what STEAM really is will hopefully help it be much more clearly defined and prevent that sort of label slapping of people wanting to call something STEAM because that's an aspirational label when it really isn't. So I think, that's where the framework was originated from, because I think we needed, as an industry, certainly the toy industry needed to have some standardization of what STEAM actually meant, and what was and what wasn't a STEAM based toy. So I think, if we can avoid the label slapping and just be honest and authentic about what STEAM actually is and what it means and where it fits, I think it's a part of children's education, it's a part of their childhood, and I think it's probably an increasing part of it, but it's not the only thing. So if you're not creating STEAM based content, don't worry about it, but don't pretend you are if you're not, I think is my message there. So if we flip that around and look at what STEAM for success looks like, then I think there's opportunities abound at the minute to really leverage your technology to get kids involved in STEAM. So whether it's VR headsets, whether it's AI, personalized learning, personalized responses, all sorts of stuff going on in the tech space to get children involved in some of the less techy, but more some of the science, some of the engineering, and some of the maths content as well. So technology at the moment is a very cool way and a very natural bedfellow for STEAM-based content. So, you know, is it augmented reality, sci-fi stuff going on? What is it that you can put in? I think absolutely getting that balance right, understanding your market and getting that balance between education and entertainment, absolutely paramount. And I am banging the drum a bit, but I do really, really get upset when I see, you know, let's make a nice little soap dish here and it takes 5 minutes for a girl, and let's make something, you know, big and engineering-y and construction-y with lots of STEM exciting stuff going on over here for boys of the same age. So I think making sure that we have age appropriate ways in that promote diversity and inclusion within the STEAM space, I think is really, really important. And I'm hoping that that will really help you with the sort of that success and making the commercial success out of your STEAM brands. My challenge for you guys, and as you know, I'm a big believer in not having to choose between making money and doing the right thing by kids. And what we want to do really is to help you do the right thing and then make a commercial success of it. So it's where your head meets your heart, and you end up with the commerciality of it. Then you know you've got something really special. And there are brands like that are doing it already. But I think, you know, everybody here has got that opportunity. So I want you to think about age appropriate content that you're either in planning stages or in or early planning stages or in sort of almost near development, and just check that you've got the age right, you've got the entertainment factor, you've got that mission-led ambition for the brand, and then look at what that can do to help, how you can leverage that to actually make that into a commercial success by doing things like accreditation programs or moving it sort of front and center and getting into the home learning arena, or going to schools or after school club. There's lots of avenues once you've got STEAM content that can really help your brand mushroom and grow. So give yourself a bit of a challenge and look at maybe choose a brand or two, or an IP or two that you think has got real potential in the STEAM space, and really have a think about understanding exactly who your audience is, running it through that STEAM toy accreditation framework, and adapting that for your particular IP, and then looking at what that then can do in terms of opening up other revenue streams, routes to market, all of that kind of stuff. So give that a go, and I'm always really interested to hear from anybody who does that and how it goes. So that's my challenge for you guys this week or this time. And then just to you know, I'm a psychologist, and I know that if I just talk at you for this 45 minutes and you go, that was interesting, and you go away, by tomorrow, whatever you were going to do is probably going to out of your head because you've got a million other things to do. So as I did last time, I want you to write yourself a little note that goes something along the lines of, what I've heard today has made me think X. And so I'm going to do something. So what is it you're going to do? And again, oldest psychology trick in the book, give yourself a deadline and identify the first step. So what is it you need? Who do you need help from? What do you need to do? And what is that very first step on the rung to getting this into action? Is it a phone call? Is it an email? Is it a piece of research? Is it a conversation? Is it a team meeting with some people to really thrash something out? And put that down. And again, stick that in your notes and revisit it over the next week or so. And always happy to hear how those sort of things go too. So hopefully you've heard something today that has really resonated, made you think, and has been useful. And I think acting on that will be beneficial for everybody, most of all the kids, because they're going to get some really great STEAM-based content that they're going to able to access and have fun with and learn from. And we're going to end up with future generations who are going to solve a lot of the world's very many problems that we need them to solve. So yeah, this is an important task, guys. So yeah, good luck.
my experience is more in, you know, the movie and TV space. And you mentioned something earlier about, you know, that can tend to be passive, you know, plopping a kid in front of a TV, and that's a passive experience. And so are there any ways to make, you know, the more audio or the visuals, I mean, of TV and movie more interactive than passive?
Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of the TV shows have websites that kids can go on that with activities that they can do, that can download, do offline, that kind of thing. I think I really like it when you have those interactivity moments with the screen where the presenter pauses and goes, "What do you think at home?" And can you have a guess what the answer might be, or whatever. So, you know, that two-way interaction, albeit slightly artificial when it's not, but giving kids that opportunity to think about what they're, even if they don't say it, at least they're thinking. It's not just, they're not just receiving the information. There's a little bit more, I wonder what happens here. What would you have done? You know, what do you think they're going to find if they try this? You know, that kind of approach on certainly young kids TV, I think works really well. But then I think supporting, you know, widening out the brand and supporting it with interactive games and resources on from a website, I think that's all a really great way of increasing the learning, increasing the engagement. And if you've got the hook of a really popular brand that kids are watching on TV, you have enormous power to use that as a force for good, because you can harness that love for that brand and you can hide that learning in all the fun stuff that you can deliver. So yeah, no, absolutely.
Oh, awesome. Thank you. Betsy just asked us a question. Would love to know if you have any examples or visionaries that might have play initiatives that are attempting to chip at the gender bias of STEAM subjects. We've talked about that a lot, but yeah, do you have anyone who's doing it right?
So my favorite in this space has to be Goldie Blocks.
Oh yeah.
Love it, love it, love it. I think there's also brands like Thames and Cosmos and Learning Resources that are really, really good at the gender neutral stuff. So they just make really great toys. They're not really good boy toys or girl toys. They're just really good products. And then, yeah, I think they're probably the brands that I really, or the manufacturers that I really rate. In terms of visionaries, there's a couple of people in the UK. There's a movement called Let Toys Be Toys. And that's a gender. And then there's Not Only Pink and Blue, and they're just worth following on socials just to get that kind of slightly different perspective. And from a diversity, sort of from an accessibility and special needs point of view, there's A Toy Like Me, which is another one. Those kind of organizations that are really promoting representation and accessibility within the industry, I think is yeah, they're really good. So they're just a few off the top of my head, but if I think of any more, I can certainly let you know.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. I have another question as well. So, you know, going kind of what you were mentioning about diversity and inclusion, you know, for the kiddos out there who have disabilities or different abilities, or, you know, you did talk about kids on the spectrum as well. Like, is there any toys or any other things in the verticals of children's media that you have really impressed you for kids with different abilities, or is there anything we should keep our eye on?
I think it's really difficult to beat Lego in this space. I think what they're doing with their foundation, with their the very nature of the Lego play, the sort of that open-ended, and you've got the instructions to build a particular model, but you've also got the open-ended play where kids can just do their own thing, and the multi-sensory tactile nature of it, and I think Lego's got to be up there in terms of any sort of inclusion and accessibility point. Going back to the gender bias thing, the other brand that I think has got huge potential in this space is Little Rebels. wearelittlerebels.com, I think it is, and it's run by a lady called Marjorie Spitalnik, who developed these, and they're women scientists, or women, not all scientists, but there is Marie Curie and Amelia Earhart and I think Malala Yousafzai and a couple of others. Anyway, so they're really powerful women, but as kids, they're dolls. The kids are dolls. The dolls are the child version of the sort of the pioneer. And I think that's a really nice way in, that role model, because I think when we're looking at science, like you say, visionaries, it's very easy to think of the Stephen Hawkins and the blokes in the space of science and technology. And I think, you know, finding women role models and using a toy like Little Rebels is a great way to promote that kind of way in, the path into that kind of content, so that kids don't just feel like it's boys or, you know, men in white coats that are going to be the scientists. It's actually, you know, and what I like about the Little Rebels thing is that it's very much they're kids, because so kids can relate to them as they are and then see themselves growing up with their story. And I think that's really nice.
Yeah, that's like a unique approach, because normally you learn about, you know, what they did when they were adults and all their accomplishments, but to see them in like their kid form, that's really cool.
Yeah. So I think thinking about things like that and doing things with a slightly different angle, I think, can be really powerful.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you. I think that's all we have for today. Dr. Amanda, thank you so much. I mean, I learned a lot because, like I said, I've never been a quote unquote STEAM kid, but I've learned it's for everyone. And I think I've taken away a lot to put it, you know, in my children's media verticals, and hopefully other folks in the different verticals have learned what they can do for theirs. And I love that the Toy Association Formula for Success, that accreditation, is free for all. So thanks for letting us be aware of that as well. But yeah, thank you. And thank you for everyone who tuned in. This is an ongoing series with Dr. Amanda, where we're going to be covering different topics every session. And we'll have another session coming up here in the next few months. So we hope you join us then. But for now, goodbye. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Take care.